Good day and welcome to the Becoming a Family-Focused System, Developing a Collaborative Service Array to Support a Family-Centered Approach conference. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Chris King. Please go ahead, sir.
I will now turn it over to our facilitator today, Jennifer Marcelli.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending where you are in the country. I wanted to just start with some introductions of the folks that you're going to hear from today. So we have Honorable Judge John Rowley, who has been a leader in drug treatment courts for the past 24 years. His primary focus now is the Tompkins County Family Treatment Court, where that team continues to improve their support of families struggling with substance use disorder through evidence-based practice and trauma-informed responses. And then we have Mindy Thomas, who serves as the Family Treatment Court Coordinator in Tompkins County, New York, serving approximately 65 to 70 parents and their families who suffer from trauma and substance use disorder, along with coordinating a collaborative team of 25 to 30 members to facilitate the engagement in community resources to achieve increased health, safety, and permanency for all families. With 14 years of experience in social services, including child welfare, Deanna Bodner's work has focused on program development, implementation, data analysis, and evaluation. And then we have Teresa Lemus, is the Director of the Family Treatment Court Training and Technical Assistance Program at Child and Family Futures. She is a nationally recognized expert in collaborative practice to improve outcomes for children and families. And we're also very lucky today to have on the call Brandon Schlosser, who is a young adult consultant with us at the Capacity Building Center for States. So next, I just wanted to quickly go over the agenda. In a moment, I'm going to review the objectives for today's webinar. And then you're going to hear from folks on the Tompkins County Family Treatment Court approach. And you'll hear about their outcomes. And then we're going to share with you some resources that we have at the Capacity Building Center for States. And then we'll also have an opportunity for a question and answer session with the speakers. So please feel free to type in questions as you hear from the presenters today, and we will get back to those at the end of the call. So before we get started, just wanted to talk quickly about the objectives for today's webinar. We really want you all to be able to identify strategies for building an organizational culture that really works collaboratively with families and community partners and service providers and stakeholders. Identify strategies for building and sustaining an organizational culture that supports healthy service array development, and increase awareness of some of the resources that we have available to support you in this work. So with all of that, I am going to turn it over to Judge Rowley.
Thank you. This is John Rowley. I'm with the Tompkins County Family Treatment Court, as my introduction stated. I want to give you a brief overview here as we kind of set the stage for today's call. We were lucky enough to really revitalize or significantly change our practice starting about 5 or 6 years ago. We'd had a family treatment court for a number of years, and then we fell into the purview of Children and Family Futures. So I want to start off by giving credit to them. This is a national organization that is really leading the way of both collecting, thinking about, and I guess then feeding back to us where we can go, what the vision is. Their mission is stated there before you. Their focus is on families in distress connected to substance use disorder, and really they're doing a remarkable job.
The mission of the Center for Children and Family Futures is to improve safety, permanency, well-being, and recovery outcomes for children, parents, and families affected by trauma, substance use, and mental health disorders.
Their focus, and our focus today, is on these key takeaways. And really, I think this is worth pausing for a moment because I don't think we often recognize the extent to which prejudice influences the way we respond. I've seen some research where using the words substance use disorder versus addict or other kinds of terminology will significantly affect the way treatment providers or medical professionals respond to our families. So this first point has particular meaning for me about what we think about substance use disorder affects how the world responds to these families. And this is a family-centered approach. This too is sensitive to us because as much as we thought we had a family-centered approach, the real definition of that includes emphasizing the important holistic approach that's necessary to really address the whole system needs. It's easy to forget about children when you have parents in front of you. We'll get more to that in a little bit. The systemic approach versus perception of readiness just has to do with what's really going on and really having some objectivity about looking at your systems. And of course, we're all in this together, and again, that'll be emphasized further as we move along here. This information is coming to you through the Prevention and Family Recovery Initiative, which the Doris Duke Foundation and the Duke Endowment funded. This was a real far-sighted program that a number of courts around the country have now benefited from, and we certainly want to give them credit for their vision. It's made a big difference to us. PFR, that's the Prevention and Family Recovery Initiative, really puts together all of these components. The cross-system collaboration, the evidence-based practice, and the focus on child abuse and neglect. This is a simple but really practical summary of a mission, because if you actually do everything that's stated in that mission, I suspect you will have a different result than what you're currently doing. That was our experience. Here's the goals that PFR began with. This is a matter of going out to existing family treatment courts, and I'm going to back up in a minute to make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking about the definition of family treatment courts. Going out to existing family treatment courts, looking at what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then really bringing them together to say, are we fully engaging our families? Are we just taking the easy cases? Are we taking all the cases? Of course, that differs by jurisdiction, but capacity is always an important issue. And what are we doing? What is actually day-to-day happening to connect with parents, to connect them with their kids, so we can get families healing and moving forward together? What are you doing to evaluate this? I think we were probably better than most in Tompkins County at looking at our data, but we weren't doing nearly enough to really measure what we were doing. And then as a result of measuring what you're doing, then you can talk about what the lessons learned are and how you're going to benefit going forward from that. The original PFR grantees are in the tan or salmon color slides, and then there's 5 more that have been added since then. So we're all happy we were selected, and you can look to these courts for their experience if there are any that you're connected to in any way.
A map of the United States showing the locations of the PFR grantees. PFR 1 grantees include San Francisco, California, Superior Court; Tucson, Arizona, Pima County Juvenile Court Center; Ithaca, New York, Tompkins County Department of Social Services; and Lumberton, North Carolina, Robeson Healthcare Corporation. PFR 2 grantees include Secaucus, Arizona, Gila River Indian Community, FHWC; Golden, Colorado, Jefferson County FIT Court; Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, Milwaukee County FDTC; and Charlotte, North Carolina, Mecklenburg County First Program.
So we're going to start at the beginning just to make sure that everybody on the call has the same orientation. A family treatment court is not a criminal drug court. This is not a criminal process. I shouldn't say that universally across the country. I'm speaking of New York State. But generally, these are civil proceedings. So we're talking about cases that come into the court system because of allegations of substance use by one or both parents that is alleged to have contributed to the neglect of the children. The family treatment court model then differs from what would happen in most jurisdictions, which is simply the engagement of attorneys and attorneys for child or guardian ad litem, whatever the various models are, and having a trial, having some kind of a dispositional order, and then hoping that parents will take advantage of that. This is a completely different approach. Where I think the one way to capture it would be to say that we're trying to take responsibility, we being the court system with all of our partners, to really put together an opportunity for families to address their needs given what they're bringing, which is strengths and many strains, many areas where they have not been functioning well because of past history, past trauma, and a variety of barriers that often poor families or otherwise struggling families are faced with. The model itself will come out more, I think, just through the description of it. Here's a graphic of it. We have our families, once they come into family treatment court and have a final order of disposition, then they're appearing regularly in court. These drug court hearings become therapeutic jurisprudence because of the nature of them, and this is something that's been widely documented in the evaluation literature now, that having a parent in a courtroom appear before a judge with a therapeutic orientation, where the judge is actually focused on what is working for the parent and is interested, is engaged, projects caring, empathetic demeanor, that this will create better outcomes. It will help to empower parents to increase their motivation and actually directly impacts what happens with the family. Of course, that's not the whole picture by any means. A person with substance use disorder has to be able to access treatment. Our focus, of course, is on that being quality treatment. And then the fourth component up here, the enhanced family-based services. That's a lot of what we're going to be discussing today, because that's a lot of what we changed. We changed a lot of everything, but those are the single biggest area of services that we changed. So again, I don't want to spend too much time on these things, but I do want to make sure you all understand family treatment court if you're not familiar with it. We have to identify families. We do that by notification from Department of Social Services, your ACS, or whatever it's designated in your state, identifying at the time of filing that this is a family that alleged to be affected by substance use disorder. Timely access to treatment and treatment services. There's no magic here. It's common sense, but it's also proven. The faster parents who are in need of substance use treatment are offered effective treatment, the more likely they are to stay in that treatment and to be successful in it. The longer the delay, the worse the outcomes. Increased management of recovery services and compliance with treatment. That has to do with the whole team approach, where you're having treatment counselors and coordinators, case managers, who are all on the same page in the sense that they're conveying their own version of the same message about support and responding to challenges. There's a lot of soothing that goes on. There's an awful lot of distress. If we take the typical case where, in fact, parents are coming into family treatment court following removal of their child or children, many of these cases, especially these days, are happening at birth. There's a great deal of distress, and it's a tough place to start. But so we do have to engage parents in a way that helps them to focus on moving forward while they're dealing with their own grief and literally trauma from having a child removed. So we kind of start with a couple strikes against us. The improved family-centered services and parent-child relationships, again, will come up during our discussion. Increased judicial oversight I've described. I want to talk more about that at some point, but I think I'll wait till later because we've been changing some things within the last couple of years, which I think are certainly of interest to me, and I think that they may be of interest to you because they're quite different than our prior approach. The contingency management systemic response, that has to do with therapeutic responses for behavior, so whether it's not coming to court, whether it's missing treatment appointments. We're trying to have a positive response, in other words, one that creates an incentive to change that behavior. Trying to be as consistent as we can, given the fact that these are all individuals with individual circumstances. That, of course, is an area of great discussion and debate, but it's an important component. And finally, that we have to have consistent communication across our teams because the situations, circumstances are changing constantly. We're just, in some ways, just trying to keep up. And I think it's also important for this collaborative, non-adversarial approach to result in parents' attorneys, attorney for the children, attorney for social services, all pulling in the same direction. I think one of the areas we've been most successful in is around the more crisis management response when a parent has lapsed or is facing some significant challenges. That we're all, that nobody's hiding information if the appropriate thing to be doing is disclosing and working together.
So this is Dina Budner with Department of Social Services in Tompkins County, and so we're a key partner with the Family Treatment Court and make referrals. So with the PFR grant that we received in 2014, the goals of it were really to focus on changing the entire system so that our entire system of all agencies and the court working with families to have a more family-centered approach. And ultimately, this created a shift in our entire culture in how we work with families. Really what happens if you take this approach and that's your goal, each time you make any change in your system, it'll force you to then make other changes to continue to work with families in a family-centered way. For us, it was by first adding a couple of key evidence-based parenting and children's services. As we added those, which we'll talk about them more specifically later, we then needed to bring that information to the team. As we were bringing that information to the team, it generated more discussion about how to work with families and with not just focusing on parent recovery, but considering child welfare, the family unit as a whole. So each step we took led to a new step. And it's still, as we talk later, you'll see we're continuing to change the system. And our partners, meeting with them regularly to continue to think about how can we think about this in a larger systems view rather than just focusing on family recovery. So the key here is to shift the focus from just focusing on the parent's recovery and how can you think about treating the parent and the child together as a unit, listening more to the families and their feedback and the process of what's happening both with services and in terms of working with them in the treatment court framework itself, and to the best of our ability to also involve foster resource families, kinship caregivers. So again, as you increase your involvement of each of these, it requires you to then think about and incorporate more information as you go.
We're going to just as a reminder about the ASPA timelines. I expect most of the people on the call are all too familiar with this. This is the federal mandate which says that children are entitled to safe and stable homes, to permanency. This has a very direct impact on the work we do in our family treatment courts because the time for parental recovery and the time for return of children home safely are not necessarily the same at all. Of course, as we all know, there are some areas of flexibility, but there's not a lot. And I think it's the most important thing that we try to emphasize with our parents is the fact that social services are required by law to be doing concurrent planning, which means when their relative comes in, when a teacher comes in, when other placement resources put their hand up, we have to look at them and look at them seriously as resources, but that our goal is to return children home. I don't think it ever works to threaten families, threaten parents around this, but in some sense it's a harsh reality. We'll occasionally have a parent finally kind of wake up in recovery at 8 or 10 months, and that's pretty far down the line with the Adoption and Safe Families Act time clock. So this highlights in a different way that point, the 12 months for unification, the fact that infants or children of any age are deeply affected by the separation. And I think that we're getting better at recognizing the negative impact on parents of the separation from their children. Of course, these systems also include families where the children have not been removed. So it has its own particular variations. But the treatment and recovery process does take time, and of course, if there's not sufficient progress, even the children who are at home, that situation is not going to stay that way.
So the key focus in working together on a family treatment court, so there's our 5 kind of main key goals, outcomes that we're focused on. One is the parent's recovery from substance use, to the best of our ability when possible to have the children remain at home while they're in treatment and engage with the family treatment court, to reunify families as quickly as possible, to reduce any types of repeat maltreatment that might occur due to substance use, and to prevent reentry into foster care. So as the judge mentioned, the family treatment court team is a multidisciplinary team, so you have attorneys, child welfare workers, treatment, attorneys for children, a whole array of service providers, all of whom see these different aspects from a different angle, a different point of view. And so we don't all necessarily have the same goals professionally based on roles, but the key is having the same vision and eye on child welfare and parental recovery and returning the children as quickly as possible. I would say one of the key things that shifted for us under the PFR is that prior we were looking at all the risk factors involved with the family that we were trying to address. But when we shifted the focus to child safety and returning children as soon as possible while parents were in recovery and still making sure the children were safe, that helped us think even more in a family-centered way about what strengths the families had, how could we work with those, how could we support those more. And so that focus helped bring the team together and have sort of a more common vision in terms of what we were doing.
All right, we're going to turn to some specifics here, again, making sure we're all thinking together about this. I love this definition that SAMHSA put together. I'm really proud of our government's work on this one. Of course, I'm the last person to read slides to you, but I do want to read this. Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach their full potential. I mean, I just think that's a great definition, and added to that, of course, is the access to evidence-based substance use disorder treatment and recovery support services are important building blocks to recovery. This can't happen in a vacuum. If willpower would solve the problem, our parents would have done that. This is another expansion of that, kind of taking the components and broadening them. So, and again, we're back to basics. You know, we're back to hierarchy of need. If we have to have stabilization in our parents. Of course, we're in New York State. We're dealing with the opiate use disorder problems in a hugely significant way. But whatever it is, we have to have stability where parents are actually in a position to participate in substance use treatment at whatever level of need that they have. They have to have a safe home for their own stability. They have to be able to be safe themselves before they're going to be able to provide a safe home for their children. And then the purpose and community components here, I think, really get to what we've been trying to convey for a long time, which is, you know, this is about kind of why are we here and where are we headed. And I think that the empowerment of parents has to include, you know, holding out this kind of hope that if you can get to this place where your substance use disorder is being treated and things start to get stable for you, that your life can have meaning in a way that it maybe has not had for a long time. Of course, we have people that go from relative stability to instability, but as far as the parents that we have, as that we track, we're talking about often multi-generational neglect and abuse. Many of our parents were in foster care or in alternative placements. Many come from very difficult home lives. Many have had contact with the family court system long before they had children. So they may not have experienced meaningful daily activities. And ultimately, you know, this is our community. These folks are us. And so that when they are fully able to participate as families, then we're talking about people who do have the resources when times are getting tough, when they're getting shaky, when the stresses of day-to-day life are giving them a hard time. They've got social networks that they're able to rely on, just like we all do. Next slide. So here's a quick slide on treatment that supports the family. What it means is, what the slide is conveying is that within substance use treatment, we have to insist that our treatment providers are treating families. We have seen that, and I'm sure many of you have seen that. It's very easy to get focused on individual. And I think generally people would say that our criminal drug courts are focused on individuals. But if we're not seeing parents within the family system and we're not supporting them within that family system, we're missing a lot, because if you start talking about lapse or relapse into substance use or other kinds of crises, those are so often related to relationship issues, the stress and distress with regard to their children. And so I think that, I think our work would suggest that always viewing these individuals in the context of their role as parents is going, while they're in the treatment system, is going to improve the outcome of that.
Treatment that supports families increases recovery from substance use disorders, encourages retention in treatment, increases parenting skills and capacity, and enhances child well-being.
So we're going to now get into a little bit more of the details about how we actually shifted our system with the goal of really having integrating family-centered approach in all aspects of our treatment court and our partner provider agencies.
Hi, this is Mindy. I'm the Family Treatment Court Coordinator here in Tompkins. I'm going to focus on some evidence-based practices. Evidence-based practices focus on improving parent-child relationships. The evidence-based services we added offered parents opportunities to have interactions with their children while developing their parenting skills. Our amazing service providers that we have here in Tompkins provide us updates on how the families' skills and relationships are improving. They provide us updates on a regular basis to our children's service coordinator along with myself, and then those updates are shared to our entire team so we all have a complete understanding on what our families are receiving. By having the evidence-based programs, it allows us to have a clear, consistent structure of the services across the families as well as fidelity monitoring. Our families are offered different evidence-based practices. Some of them that are offered for our families include Safe Care, CPP, Child-Parent Psychotherapy, and Strengthening Families. Dina's going to get more in depth and talk about these 3 different programs in a little bit, but they are common practices that we are using on a daily basis with our families.
Family-centered FTC approach critical components include achieving a comprehensive family-centered approach requires more than simply adding services. Apply a family-focused lens. Institute evidence-based practices as the expected standard of care. Promote value of strengthening parenting skills and the parent-child relationship as a means to improve overall family well-being. And promote shared understanding that parents and children are most effectively serviced through a comprehensive family-centered approach versus individual, fragmented systems of care.
All right, it's time to have some fun. We are going to have a polling question. If you haven't done this before, I think you'll enjoy it. It gives us an opportunity to come to understand a little bit more about our audience. Please look at the poll before you, and we'll let some results come in, and will help inform the rest of our discussion. So the first question, for those of you who don't have the screen in front of you, is what is your experience with family treatment courts or other types of cross-system collaboration? Just as the numbers are roughly coming in, look at about 20% have no experience at all, 45% with some experience, 23% the good amount, 12% with a lot. The second question is an open-ended question, which of course will give us a 563 open-ended answers. The question is, what challenges have you encountered in collaborative practice? And we're going to take a minute and try to just respond to some of the comments that are coming in. I'd also suggest that if you have a particular question, at the end we're going to be taking questions. There's too many people on the line to do it live by voice, so we'll be doing it by written questions, but feel free to do that. Communication is coming up number 1. I'm not sure if you all are seeing this or not, but so I mean it's a little bit hard to answer that question without more. I can say that it has taken a tremendous amount of work to establish a system which honors all of the restrictions, privacy, sharing of information, who needs to be involved in what discussions, what information the judge gets, what information he doesn't get, when there's differences of opinion, how those get resolved. All of those are part of the experience. It's like any other team. It starts off as a collection of people and not a team at all, and then over time and with a lot of hard work starts making some progress with that. Let me see if, feel free to let me know if you want to answer one of those.
Sure. Yes, go ahead.
I can add to the communication as well. Again, this is Mindy. We get weekly updates from our treatment providers. They provide us treatment reports from our substance use outpatients, along with our mental health outpatients, along with all of our children's service providers. All those communications are sent into myself. I compile this information into what we call parent summaries, and this is what we review during our case review while we're discussing our families prior to our court sessions. And these appearance summaries are then dispersed out to our partners so they can have an understanding of what's going on with our families. So we have an update from our caseworkers, treatment providers, children's service providers, and myself. So we all can have a centralized hub of communication, and we're all understanding what is going on with each one of our families and children.
And this is Dina. So with regard to communication and collaboration, so we'll talk a little bit more after this about some of the specifics we did to help facilitate, particularly where some conflicts in communication come up regarding differing goals that roles on the team have. So we'll go into that. But I think a key thing is that we have regular weekly meetings where everybody on the team comes to the table and everybody has an equal voice in the process. It took us some time to get there, and again, we'll talk about like different things we put in place to establish that. But it doesn't happen on its own. It really takes some intention and clear commitment and motivation of leadership from the court, from child welfare, and from partner agencies. The motivating factor of the commitment, though, is the outcomes, better outcomes for children. So when one understands and sees the improvements you can have for families with substance use disorders using family treatment court, that itself helps motivate everybody to come to the table, stay at the table, and really work out some of the issues that we needed to be able to communicate and really collaborate effectively.
So we're not going to spend much more time on this because we have a lot of material to cover, but it's kind of like going back through the bad old days, looking at all your questions, because we've been to all the places that I think that you suggest there, the conflict and treatment recommendations, the DSS not being on the same page. That hasn't been our experience, but it is the common experience in our state and around the country too, where all this is often personality differences. It's not unusual for there to be conflict between the court and social services, but I think that's the single biggest key to our success. It's been the fact that we have worked for that to be a productive relationship. And of course, certainly not without its challenges, but I don't think that it's possible for this to be successful without that, and I think that's number one on the list. Let me just say, too, that we are a peer learning court in Tompkins County, and if there are specific questions for myself, Dina, or Mindy, our contact information is available. I'll be happy to have follow-up discussion with that.
Polling results. For the question, what is your experience with family treatment courts or other types of cross-system collaboration? 20.2% of participants responded no experience at all. 41% responded some experience. 24.8% responded good amount of experience. And 13.8% responded a lot of experience. For the question, what challenges have you encountered in collaborative practice? Responses include no experience. Families being pulled in many directions due to the inability of services to collaborate, turf issues with Department of Social Services, willingness to collaborate, culture change, GAL program, families attorneys, and child welfare programs have usually not had the same goals in mind. Differing values, breaking down silos, not having the same agency philosophy, and timeframes around permanency.
We're going to end the polling part now and get back to the slides. Someone magically makes that happen. And now I will go to the background for Tompkins County with capacity building. let me just introduce this by saying that we were established our court in 2001, and even at that point I was experienced in the drug court model, but not the family treatment court model, and they really are very different things. And I think despite our desire to be focused on the family, it's just, I think it's the nature of the process that the parent is the one in front of us. The parents have the crises going on. The parents are the ones coming to the court, and we inevitably over time, despite our efforts, focused on only parent recovery. So we're going to start with a slide about that.
So, yeah, so we found that once we started doing some more of the changes with the PFR grant of focusing more on children, we in child welfare know and have seen over time that including services and focus on child well-being is essential to working with the family together.
The cost of focusing only on parent recovery threatens parents' ability to achieve and sustain recovery, increases risk of relapse, threatens parents' ability to establish a healthy relationship with the child, increases exposure to trauma for the child and family, contributes to parent continuing to struggle with unresolved guilt, and leads to prolonged and recurring impact on child safety and well-being.
And so, go to the next slide.
Yep.
So when the focus is only on parents, then you miss huge chunks of what's important with the family. Important in particular with younger children, making sure that early intervention services are in place to address any kind of developmental needs. Making sure that children who are in school are getting their educational needs met. We know that a large number of our PINs, our juvenile justice caseload is related to some of our child welfare cases or children who were previously in foster care. Placement and residential treatment programs puts a strain on families and children in particular, and then the children oftentimes develop their own substance abuse disorders over time. Working in Department of Social Services, so I oftentimes also work with our homeless population and our temporary assistance population, and so many times now that I've been at the department for going on 15 years now, I've seen as children move through child welfare, they will later show up in our homeless population or also come back into the child welfare system. So being able to address those issues early on when the families first come to the treatment court and child welfare is essential to really shifting how we work with families in general in our community and improving everybody's well-being.
So the family recovery model, it makes sense on so many levels. It's just hard to do. But I think it is true to say that if you have two parents with substance use disorder, the children that they bring, the children that they have and now come into our court system are at the highest risk of any children in the community just by the genetics, much less the trauma and experience. So this is really an opportunity. It's a reality. So that our effort to recognize and to coordinate those services in a way that engages parents has been an extremely important part of our more recent success. We want parents to be identifying what's missing in their skill set, to be stable in their approach. They want to be, and we want them to be employed as possible, having their needs met.
Family recovery for parents includes developing parenting skills and competencies, family connections and resources, parental mental health co-occurring, medication management, addressing parental substance use, and domestic violence. Family recovery for the family includes obtaining basic necessities, employment, housing, childcare, transportation, and family counseling. Family recovery for the child includes addressing well-being and behavior, developmental and health, school readiness, trauma, mental health, adolescent substance use, and at-risk youth prevention.
But the main point being that this has to be a vision of family recovery, which means that all of our partners have to be involved, from the teen pregnancy program to those serving 18 to 24-year-olds facing homelessness, to our families who are cut across in the criminal justice system as well into our family treatment court, the mental health with co-occurring disorders. There's just a wide variety of needs here.
So as we moved into the PFR grant, the number of people on our team increased. As the judge was saying, as we began to include different service providers who are working with our families. So now we have a mental health liaison. We actually have 2 different mental health agencies in the community. We have a 3rd agency that does comprehensive assessments. Our domestic violence services agency has a liaison who comes, and then of course we have our substance abuse liaisons. We have early intervention with child development who periodically come. We have discussions with housing agencies. So the number of partners, if you're really going to do this, increases, and you have to keep hearing their voices, listening to their concerns, and working with them, with your partners, as well as working within the core team.
And here is a depiction of the collaborative capacity. This is actually, when you break it down, proved to be very useful to us. And some of you in your participant chat were raising these issues as well. You know, are we on the same team? What do we see our roles at? What are we missing? And I think if you did this kind of as a with secret polling, and yet everybody put down what your job was, and you think the other team member's job was, there might be a bit of a disagreement there. So we had to work that out. We had to come up with a common mission statement. We had to really put on the table what our goals were. And as Dina said earlier, I think our values were very much aligned, but we had to understand the mission of the different agencies, and of course, because that creates the tension, and the tension is inevitable, and it's just a question of whether or not it's going to be productively responded to, or it's going to be the end of your effort. The conducting system walkthroughs. I'm going to ask Mindy to talk about that. Because we had a system walkthrough that I think was really effective.
I wasn't on the team when it occurred, so I think it's helpful to hear my perspective, because that is one of the common things I hear about when Tompkins started the PFR grant. And I've heard a lot of results due to that trauma walkthrough, right down to our core officers changing their approach when they approach one of our participants or family members that are in the courtroom or in the courthouse, to our residential treatment facility that's in the area, attempting and doing different techniques to make sure we are being trauma informed and ensuring the safety for all of our family members that are involved.
I wanted to pick up on the drop-off analysis, just to pick out one more from these, where it's a simple upside-down triangle, right? Everybody who's potentially eligible is on top. Your next box down is, you know, how many got referred. Next box is how many actually came into the program, and then right down the line. And it's so meaningful. It's such a simple model, but it's so meaningful, I think, if you spend time on, you know, why did we go from this number at the top to the next number to the next number, and really digging into that is just I think an essential but pretty simple way to come to understand what impacts we're having and why. You know, where are we losing people? What's happening? And what's the cause of that? What can be changed? What can't be changed?
Yeah, and then the use of data was really important for us in terms of first establishing what our baselines were. So this is a little bit related to what the judge talked to. But then seeing it helps you then identify what goals you have, where you want to change things, and then what changes you need to make. And we'll talk later in the slides about some of the specifics of how we use data and how our outcomes changed.
Opportunities for assessing collaborative capacity also include get feedback from frontline staff and providers. What is really happening? Get feedback from clients. What is their experience? And assess cross-training needs. Where are the knowledge gaps?
So here is I think a nice compilation of systems. The program on the left, the descriptions on the left are kind of where we were, and the system on the right, the list on the right, is where we are today.
Before a family-centered approach, they were adult-centered, program-driven, checklist-oriented, anecdotal, had disparate goals, and focused on parent recovery, services for parent, and parent graduation. After implementing changes, they became family-centered, client and family-driven, milestone-oriented, data-informed, and shared goals. They focused on family recovery, parent-child services, child and family, and well-being.
Let me just pick out one, checklist-oriented versus milestone-oriented. This is actually both a concept and something that's happened in reality for us. Many of you may be familiar, if not, you can envision a simple phase-based program. You come into a program, you're in phase 1. When you've done enough, you're in phase 2. When you've done enough, you're in phase 3, and then phase 4, or whatever it is, before you finish the program. And that's where almost all the criminal drug courts started and remain. That's where most of the family treatment courts started and remain. But we have been working for a couple years now with milestone-based program. We didn't make this up, but we've created our own set of milestones. And this is really recognition that we want to give more power to the parents, have them more control over the progress, the rate of progress, and also to have them be able to monitor that simply by looking down at a milestone sheet. So here we're talking about something like, how does a parent progress from supervised parenting time to unsupervised parenting time? What do they have to accomplish? And we're focused very much on the actions and behaviors of the parents. How are they presenting? What are they doing? Where are they in their substance use treatment? How have their parenting time, supervised parenting time been going? Those kind of things. But what we're trying to get away from, I don't mean to say meaningless checklists, but checklists that can lose their meaning compared to milestones, which are specifically talking about what behaviors, what actions and behaviors are necessary to make progress when you've come into a program where the court has made a finding that it's not safe for you to be around your children. Go ahead and keep moving here to some specifics.
Yeah, so these are the initial changes we made in services we added under the PFR grant. So we added 2 parenting and children's services, strengthening families, which is an evidence-based program that was designed for and works specifically with families with substance use disorders. We focused on the age group from 6 to 12 years old. We added Safe Care, which is another evidence-based intervention that works with children under 5 years old. It's a structured curriculum that focuses on child health, home safety, and parent-child interactions. The key with these is that they both have fidelity monitoring. They're very structured. They're evidence-based. Sometimes we get a little pushback from families because of the structure, but we've held to them, and we've had like amazing improvements in outcomes with some of our families. So with Safe Care, I actually recently analyzed the data just prior to implementing Safe Care, and we had about 40% of children ages 0 to 5 If they didn't participate in safe care, were returned home. When parents successfully completed safe care, 80% had their children returned home. We also offered, added a parent-child services coordinator position to really keep their focus on making sure we were getting the referrals to these services, doing follow-up with them, getting feedback, and then coming to the team and actually reporting on what's happening with the children. And this was really a key factor in changing how the team was functioning and keeping our focus on children and families. We also changed practices within the family treatment court team processes. As the judge mentioned, we reviewed and clarified our family treatment court mission and the roles of each team member. This helped us develop a clear single goal vision that everybody keeps their eye on, while also making sure we understand the differences in the roles, the goals of individual roles. And we regularly have a facilitator come in and review those about every 4 to 6 months, just because there's turnover in the team, and it's just very easy with the ongoing day-to-day to kind of lose track of that. We've implemented what's called training and solution-focused trauma-informed care. This has really significantly changed the culture and how everybody interacts with the clients, talks with them, interacts with each other in the team. The judge can maybe talk about this a little bit more.
Yeah, so this is what I was referring to earlier about my own transformation with my approach. I think it's easy to think of a typical approach where I've got all the information. We've got a well-coordinated system. I have all the information in front of me. And the typical drug court model is these conversations happen in the courtroom between the adult and the court, but not with the attorney speaking. This is a conversation or an interrogation, depending on how you approach it. So it would not be unusual for me to have a parent get called, have them come up to a podium. I'm up on the bench, elevated bench. It's obviously formal in that way, no matter how informal I want to be. It's a formal setting. And I would just start with the deficits. You've missed a couple of treatment appointments this week. What's going on with that? I mean, I'm trying to, and that's a kind of a backward supportive way, but that's immediately negative and deficit focused. The solution-focused trauma-informed care is a emerging model that has been really transformative, as Dina said, because it affects the whole system when it's working right, from child protective all the way through the interactions in the courtroom. Just to give you a sample of how that's changed, and this kind of happened organically, where I stopped going on the bench and I took the podium and the parents stay out in the audience. We have all of our parents in at the same time. I know different people have different models for different reasons, but our parents can stay in the audience. They can be sitting with their peer support person or anybody else, and my first question to them is typically going to be, how are you feeling today? You look like you're a bit rushed. What's going on? What are your goals for today? What do you hope to accomplish? What's been keeping you up at night? Just really trying to create an atmosphere of care and of concern. And it's not unusual for people with substance use disorder to have been raised or have lived in an environment where it's up to them to figure things out. The single biggest challenge is to have people actually identifying when they are in trouble or when they need help or when things are slipping, and then accepting that help. If people will, so our first thing we tell people, kind of the number one for family treatment court, is engagement. If you come in and will be open enough to that conversation, then there's a chance here. And if we can demonstrate to them that we're serious about helping them make the decisions they identify as being important to them, taking the steps to get there, then they don't walk away feeling like they've been re-traumatized. And I've talked to a number of people who appeared before me, and as nice as a guy as I like to think I am, that people will say things like, I don't remember anything you said to me, Judge. It was so traumatizing every time I had to go up there and speak to you. I don't even remember what you said. And that's not the atmosphere in the courtroom anymore. I think this is a huge change, and I'd be interested in talking more with any judges or other people who are interested in that shift, because I think we're breaking some new ground with that. We've also substantially changed the way we did our case review, and I'm going to ask Mindy to review that with you.
Yeah, Dina already shared with you a little bit about that, having a structured case review. We have multiple partners, community supports in the case review. It's a round table. We're all sitting around at the table. DSS is a major partner of ours. We could have up to 11 individuals in the case review from the Department of Social Services providing updates and feedback on how our families are doing. We have our respondents attorneys present, our attorney for children's office present, our liaison, and an advocate focusing on domestic violence. And what I do is I focus, I call the case, and our child is the primary focus. The child or the children is the center of the communication happening in the room. I will call on the caseworker first. The caseworker working with the family will provide an update on how the family is doing. I will then call on the assistant caseworker so she can share about how parenting time is going. I will then call on the children's service coordinator so she can share about the evidence-based programs that our families are currently involved in and provide an update on how those services are going. I then go to the attorney for children's office, where either the attorney or the social worker who works for the attorney for children's office will provide an update on anything they want to add or advocate on behalf of their client or inquire about a service or request a service to be added. I will then go to our liaisons, whether it be with substance use treatment, mental health, or our advocacy center. I then go to our respondents attorneys who can advocate on behalf of their client. And then I'm the caboose that provides any type of other updates that may need to be reported upon. I may have just seen them that morning. I can provide an update on what's going on that day or most recently, including drug testing, reporting, presentation, approaches, actions and behaviors. And of course the judge provides support, inquiries, final decisions, while we're talking about the cases right then and there.
So we've got about 27 minutes left, and there's some other things that happen at the end, and we want to do some questions. So we're going to be a little bit quicker in going through this. I already mentioned the milestone approach. Let's get to our next polling question. For those of you who don't have this in front of you, in your community, do families involved with child welfare who suffer from parental substance use disorder have the support they need to reunite and have improved well-being? And if you say yes, we want to come see your community. And the second question is, do substance use disorder treatment providers in your jurisdiction support child welfare workers when both are involved with the same family? That's a very interesting question. So we're just starting to get the responses coming in. Of course, the first question really does tell you, it kind of gives you the answer within the question, but this is where family treatment courts started from, and we continue to maintain that family treatment court, this model reflects the diligent efforts that the law requires of us. That if we're saying to parents, here's a choice for you, you can either come into a program which is going to closely supervise you, support you, give you evidence-based programming, is going to, on a weekly basis, make changes to your parenting time, make those kinds of decisions, or you can go do it like we've done it before, which is you see your caseworker when he or she directs you to appear, you see your counselor when you're supposed to, If it doesn't work after a year, we'll file a TPR. That TPR issue is what first motivated us to get started. So I maintain that the Family Treatment Court is the model that we should be talking about. Most of you are answering no, of course, to the first question. The second question I think is interesting as well. Do substance use disorder treatment providers in your jurisdiction support child welfare workers when both are involved with the same family? This has been not a simple answer for us either. We have had to tackle some perception that the individual is the person receiving the treatment, not the parent in the context of the family. But I do encourage you, those of you in both parts of that system, to open up that discussion. One of the things that we'll reflect on a little bit is the fact that we had to bring the various levels of leadership in order for us to move this process along. We have to have the executive directors, we have to have the clinical directors, we have to have the line staff all working together.
Polling results. For the question, do substance use disorder treatment providers in your jurisdiction support child welfare workers when both are involved with the same family? Answers include somewhat, dependent on providers, sometimes, no, unsure, I know there is communication, but not sure what else they provide, often, some providers, and in most instances.
We're going to close this question now. We're going to talk about the actual work. And you've heard about most of these already. Then we've mentioned the parent-child psychotherapy, comprehensive psychosocial assessments. That has to do with creating a position. So very early on, as soon as we have stability, we are having a comprehensive evaluation done to give us information on how we should approach a particular parent. I can say that my experience of this is that the documentation of the losses our parents have experienced, the trauma that they've experienced is really quite remarkable. And when it translates into specific strategies for helping support a family, it's extremely helpful. Of course, I'm hoping all of you are focused on the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences data, which is out there. We are tracking that for our parents. Unfortunately, most of our parents are in the 6 to 7 to 10 range for their ACEs scores. Those of you are familiar with that.
Other new positions and services include parent health screens, child development council home visits, family support specialists, amazing dads, and family-centered treatment.
I'm going to go ahead on to the next slide, if I can make that happen. We did create a fathering program. I'm going to ask Mindy to comment on that.
Yeah, we did some different approaches to engage our fathers into the program. One of the ways that we did that was having an all-male court session around Father's Day. We do it for our mothers as well. We'll have an all-female court session around Mother's Day. The first time we did this, it was very eye-opening on the homes that our fathers were raised in, the relationships that they have with their own fathers, or lack thereof, or none of, or no knowledge of. It was very traumatizing for all of us involved. I can't imagine our fathers who had to live in it. We have a new program that started. We touched on it earlier. It's called Amazing Dads. We were the pilot program for this. This program has been very beneficial for our fathers. We actually have an alumni that stemmed from the Amazing Dads program, where our dads continue to decide to meet monthly after the 15 sessions that they completed together. After those 15 sessions, they had an actual graduation from the program. They're still connected with the facilitators of that group, Tommy Miller and Gail Smith, and our dads build on those relationships and continue to stay involved in each other's lives. Child Development Council also has a dads program. It's called Team Dad. This is an open group, and our dads are able to join at any time. This is open to them to attend on a weekly basis. There is an incentive to this program as well for our dads. And the thing I'd like to also add is we do have peer support that we were able to gain through our SAMHSA grant, and that's been a key component for our families. And one of our peer supports is a graduate from Family Treatment Court. So he is able to be an ongoing support for our dads in the program, provide them with any type of daily obstacles or barriers that they may be going through. He is able to help them and support them throughout the way.
Strategies to engage fathers in family-based services include: make father engagement a priority, identify and locate fathers as early as possible, ensure quality father-child visits, ensure fathers receive gender-responsive services, and ensure treatment is gender-responsive.
I'm going to move on to a couple of more slides that we think are important for you to see. This is kind of a summary of a variety of points. We're not going to spend much time on it other than to say that a current focus of ours is to try to really engage our foster parent or kinship caregivers. We're calling them resource parents now, in the sense that they have to be part of the picture. Sometimes they are, sometimes it happens naturally. Far too often it does not, and we want to improve that because they're a tremendous, first of all, they're a tremendous resource because they're providing the safe home to these children, but there's a tremendous opportunity for partnering with our parents.
Strategies to ensure quality and frequent parenting time include: involve parents in planning, elicit foster parent or kinship caregiver support, invite parent to join child's appointments, enlist natural community settings, example, bowling alley, focus on strengths and positive interactions, provide parenting support and coaching, prepare parents for the separation, this behavior is normal and expected, and be innovative.
I'm going to go on to the capacity building because this is really the exciting stuff. Like what happens when you do all the things that we've done? Dina?
So I just want to say you being able to track your data and your outcomes can really help support the development of your program. You can use the data in creative and helpful ways. We were able to look at, early on, we looked at the differences in the outcomes for our two treatment agencies, and that led to some discussions with leadership at one of the agencies that was falling behind and have helped to make some changes over time. We've tracked the effects of the outcomes of using safe care and strengthening families to see how those have improved the outcomes of our families. And they also, at certain times, gives a reality check to the team, because oftentimes team members will be struggling with specific cases, and that case will dominate some of the discussion. But if you can kind of pull the team back to look at the overall outcomes, it kind of helps ground what's going on.
Other ways to use data to inform decisions included: use concrete data tools to help partners see the bigger picture, child and family well-being outcomes, and used data to drive decisions and program improvements.
We've developed a dashboard that every quarter, every 3 or 4 months, we look at some specific outcomes of the program. We developed the dashboard with the entire team, so we asked attorneys, attorney for children, other folks what was important for them. And so it helps the whole team keep an eye on what's happening and what service, how we might want to change the program or services if we see areas that are falling behind.
Data dashboard questions considered for its development include: what are you trying to change? What outcomes are most important? Is there shared accountability for moving the needle in a measurable way in FTC and in larger systems? And who are we comparing to?
So this is a graph that shows you how our outcomes have changed over time. So the dark bars are before the PFR grant, and then the green bars are during the implementation of PFR, and then the hash bars are since the end of PFR and the beginning of our SAMHSA grant.
The chart breaks down as follows. Results for 2011 through 2013 before the PFR grant: 19% graduation, 10% relative custody, 11% transfers, 45% surrender, and 15% unsuccessful. Results from 2014 through 2017, during the implementation of PFR: 45% graduation, 8% relative custody, 21% transfers, 16% surrender, and 14% unsuccessful. Results from 2017 through 2019, since the end of the PFR and beginning of SAMHSA grant: 43% graduation, 41% relative custody, no transfers, 7% surrender, and 9% unsuccessful.
And you can see we had a substantial shift, increase in our graduations and reduction in our surrenders during the PFR grant. We've maintained that level of graduation under the SAMHSA grant now, and now we've had a big shift, even a greater reduction in our surrenders and a reduction in cases we transfer to relative custody and permanency for families.
So let me just make a comment on that. I know there's been a question about Family First and what impact Family First has on all of this. I think that this slide shows you some of the direction we're going to need to be moving, the relative custody emphasis, for example. But at least our experience in New York, Family First is still being digested at the state level, and we have not seen any specific direction yet. Whether it's already required of us or not is a different thing, but I just want to let you know that we haven't had direct impact yet.
And then this slide just shows some additional data since the ending of PFR and some of the recidivism back into family treatment courts.
Family treatment court recidivism. New referrals, PFR results: 70% no previous FTC, 13% no FTC graduation, 8% previous FTC unsuccessful, 10% new petitions, and none active.
So especially with the opioid epidemic and how difficult it is to maintain abstinence or even just not relapsing, we've had some cases that have come back into family treatment court or have had additional petitions. So this has changed, again, sort of changed some of our culture and how we approach things, but we're still 70% of our cases have had no previous family treatment court. So looking at this data is helping us to think like what are some of the next steps, what are some of the new changes we want to make to reduce any recidivism that we might have.
So sustainability, my brief comment would be build your program and then we'll work on how you continue it. It takes work every day, but if you build success, you got a lot better chance of sustaining success. Yes.
So with sustaining collaborations, it really is important to keep your focus on the relationships and keeping positive, strong, productive relationships with key partners. Conflicts will continue to come up, but staying committed to the recovery of the families and outcomes for children will help keep those relationships on track. It's like putting some of the other stuff aside and saying, coming back to the collaboration, to the relationship, and saying we need to keep working on this, I think is so core to being able to sustain a really good, healthy collaboration.
We're going to wrap this part up. These are, again, some slides, all of which are available to you about some of the key pieces. This is the paradigm shift. It really is a paradigm shift when you're focused on the deficits of a parent as compared to the strengths of a family, when you're focused on empowering parents versus confronting parents. But this is a nice summary of those kinds of changes.
Paradigm shifts in adult recovery and family recovery include defining parent progress and success, from compliance and attendance to desired behavioral changes. Changing the language used, from visitation to parenting time, from relapse to lapse, from clean time to sustained recovery. Responding to relapse or lapse, from automatic change in the permanency plan or return to family drug court phase 1 to comprehensive assessment of the situation and therapeutic adjustments. broadening the scope of goals, from primary focus on rapid or early reunification to successful reunification with lasting permanency, reframing decision-making, from a primary focus on risk factors, what could have happened, to established safety supports and protective factors, engaging participants, from service referrals as a sanction to service referrals as an incentive and acknowledgement of a parent's progress, redefining the client, from an individual parent participant to the whole family.
This slide is important because PFR and the Children and Family Futures really helped us to change our orientation, to see ourselves as our families as consumers of services in the community, and that through data and collaboration and coordination, we could be asking more of our partners. As we put out more, they need to put out more, and we were able to say specifically what it is that we were lacking.
The court can ask the system the following. Has everyone in the family been assessed for service needs? What services are provided to address the specific needs of children and other family members? Can children accompany their parents to treatment? If so, are there any restrictions on age and number of children? What evidence-based parenting or family strengthening programs are provided? What services are being provided to promote full family wellness?
This is a typical circle of engagement. If parents get what they need and they know what they have to do, then we can become we start focusing together on how we make progress. I like this slide, but I'm not going to linger with it.
The circle of engagement includes, clockwise from the top, leverage the phase structure to create behavior-based, family-centered program. Allow the parents to see how their progress through the phases moves them to their goal. Create shared goals and coordinated case plans for all partners, including the family. Focus on vital services, and lay out steps toward reunification. An illustration is shown with a hand placing a bridge between family treatment courts and the child welfare system, with a caption that reads, "The need for child welfare to be an equal partner cannot be understated."
This is a point that I've made earlier. It couldn't be more emphasized than I've made it. It's essential.
Okay, Jen, all you. Jennifer?
Thanks. Yeah, sorry about that. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to just quickly go over a set of resources that the Capacity Building Center for States has to support you in this area. So we have the Becoming a Family Focused System, and it's a collection of user-friendly resources that's designed to help teams assess and amplify positive agency culture and climate, identify areas that need attention, and implement strategies to bring about meaningful and sustainable improvements. And so right now, there are 3 products available. The Assessing Culture and Climate, which provides foundational information and step-by-step guidance for assessing how agency culture and climate support family engagement, continuity of relationships, and collaborative development of services to meet families' needs. And managers can use this brief to learn about basic concepts, form a team, choose or develop assessment tools, and conduct an assessment and analyze the results. And then the next resource we have is Strategies for Building a Culture for Service Collaboration that really presents strategies to establish, support, and reinforce culture and climate for collaborative development of a service array that's responsive to families and youth. And then we have Strategies for Building a Culture to Partner with Families. And that really, helps offer some strategies to establish, support, and reinforce agency culture and climate that's supportive of family engagement and continuity of relationships of children in care. And then later this summer, we are going to have a few other resources, a couple other resources become available. The How We Partner with the Community to Improve Service Options podcast series, and that's going to highlight real stories from the field around how agencies are changing their organizational culture from compliance to a collaborative. And then How We Become a Family-Friendly Agency animated video series is going to follow the experience of child welfare staff, stakeholders, and family leaders as they implement strategies to shift culture and climate. And then we'll also have an Improving Culture Begins with Leaders tip sheet. So please stay tuned for that. Please visit our website. You'll see that at the end for the resources that are available. So next we are going to move towards our Q&A, our question and answer session. So the first question, and I'll put this out to any of our presenters. Somebody was asking a question around funding, guidance on funding for a program like this. So does anybody have some thoughts for them on that?
So a key thing for us was sustaining our services. So like we said, the initial services for safe care and strengthening family came from the PFR grant. But then we also had the vision of making those part of our preventive services within child welfare. So we've been able to sustain those that way, and I think somebody asked about Family First, so I think Family First funds would easily be able to be used for those types of services. Some of our other services, like child-parent psychotherapy, actually can be we do training for our mental health services, and then they're able to bill through Medicaid. So a lot of heavy emphasis on bringing in interventions and training agencies to then be able to use other funding sources.
Thanks, guys. So Jennifer lost her audio, so I am jumping in to kind of help facilitate this Q&A here. Judge, there was a question from one of our participants, Yolanda Bennett. She said that I believe you spoke about a team approach, and she wondered who is on the team and are the parents a part of the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. We feel like we're successful when the parents consider us their team, but they are not on our team. This is the professionals only. It's the parents' attorneys, the attorney for the children, DSS caseworkers, and their supervisor and their attorney, and then the various other service providers. So we've got about 20 people in the room when we're having these discussions. The way that works is prior to a weekly court session, actually the day before our weekly court session, we spend about 3 hours going through our cases for the day, probably about 30 cases on the calendar, 35 cases on the calendar for the next day, and we spend 3 hours discussing those.
Great. Thanks for answering that, Judge Rowley. And then there's one other question here, and for any of you really, from Emily Voss. How do you format your all-female and or your all-male sessions different than your typical format in the courtroom?
It's only our fathers that are present in the courtroom and only our mothers present in the courtroom, allowing us to give them the time, all of our time and energy and support during those sessions. And you know, we have some incentives available for them. Our Amazing Dads graduation was actually done in the same time that we had our all-male court session, so it was able to show the Amazing Dads program to our other dads and have the support of that. And our moms will generally get a flower or something of that nature to emphasize being a mom, and that they are still a mom no matter what, if the children are in the home or not.
Yeah, and I think that I would just encourage creativity around that. We kind of just came up with it, but I think it's really been successful.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And then there was one other question around the models that you're using again. So they noted that you identified from Jessica Roscoe. She identified that you had CPP, Safe Care, and then was trying to remember the other. And just an FYI for all of our participants today, we will have some resources that have been shared from the Tompkins County and CF Futures team that will be in the resources pod when we pull that up here in just a few minutes as we begin to close out our session today. But if you all could just answer that quick question on the models again, and then we will be prepared to transition.
Yeah, the three biggest changes we met: programming, child and parent psychotherapy, is strengthening families, which is also a version of it, is celebrating families, similar kind of models, and then Safe Care, which ultimately ended up being housed with our public health nurses, and now it's being offered to other members of the community, an in-home family support model.
Great, thanks, Judge Rowley. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer Marcelli to close us out for the rest of our session today.
Thanks, Nicole. So on the next slide, we wanted to let folks know about an upcoming event that we have. It's our Child Welfare Virtual Expo. Please join us on Thursday, September 19th. This year's Child Welfare Virtual Expo theme is around effectiveness in child welfare, our role in improving the lives of children and families. And so on your screen, you'll see how you can register. We really encourage you guys to register and attend the sessions there.
Register for the Child Welfare Virtual Expo at https://capacity.childwelfare.gov/virtual-expo.
And then we also just wanted folks to know how you can stay connected with the center. So if you are not already signed up for our Gov delivery system, this keeps you up to date on all of the center resources, events, and things coming up. So please sign up for that if you're not already, so you can stay in touch.
Sign up online at https://public.gov.com/accounts/USACFCBCS/signup/10906.
And then we also have a link for an evaluation survey for today's event. We really appreciate any feedback that you guys can provide us on how to continue to make our events even better. And then finally, here is just our contact information for anything that you may need. So thank you all very much for coming today.
We are at the end of our scheduled time, so we will be finishing this webinar shortly. Feel free to contact us using our website, capacity.childwelfare.gov/states. That's capacity.childwelfare.gov/states. You can also contact us by our email address, capacityinfo@icf.com. That's capacityin@icf.com, or by our phone number, 844-222-0272. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.